There's still roughly 1 trillion barrels worth of oil in the Earth's crust. And if you figure that the average price of that subsequent oil will be $100 a barrel, that's $100 trillion worth of business yet to be done. However, at some point, when an alternative is good enough, people will snap over. And that's what the oil companies fear the most.
We use 280 million gallons of gasoline a week in California. Right now, the price is $2.20. Well, a year ago, it was $1.20. Okay, there's $1 more a gallon. Somebody's making $280 million more a week this year. It's the same gas, the same pipelines, the same refineries. The profits are outstanding.
What the oil companies feared is that electric vehicles would become successful 6 years from now. What the automobile companies feared was that they'd be losing money on electric vehicles in the next 6 months.
Even as car companies made electric cars, they fought them at every step. What was their motive? Why were they so determined to take them off the road?
I mean, I think in the beginning, General Motors didn't believe the car was going to catch on. I don't think they thought they'd ever have to worry about something like a conspiracy to keep it from happening. They hated the mandate. They hated it so much that they ended up not even really wanting to be in the business of EVs.
What I frankly detected was a huge resentment about being told what type of motor vehicle had to be made, and it became a fight of principle rather than one of trying to actually technologically solve the problem.
I do know that I was surprised at some of the stances they took in Sacramento in arguing. End of comment.
In a confidential 1995 memo, the American Automobile Manufacturers Association sought to hire a PR firm to manage a so-called grassroots and educational campaign to create a climate to repeal the mandate. The challenge, according to the document, was greater consumer acceptance of electric vehicles. Why would the car companies campaign so hard against their own creation?
I made the case at the General Motors board that the reason for the EV1 was to give General Motors a very big head start in how you transform electricity into the drive power for the car. And we give them 2-3 years lead. And in my judgment, it did. But my frustration was they did not capitalize on the lead. And the reason, which was discussed at the board, was that there was not a profit seen to be coming out of either electric cars or hybrids. They could not understand how Toyota could possibly make a profit out of the Prius, for example. They were going to lose their shirt. And as evidence have shown, I don't think Toyota is losing their shirt.
If loss of revenue worried car companies, then the electric car posed another problem altogether. It had no internal combustion engine, the cornerstone of the auto industry.
These parts represent a large part of a dealership's income through the replacement and the maintenance.
Essentially, this group of parts is a visual representation of the profits that the auto industry doesn't make when they sell an EV1 or an EV in general. I can actually identify a lot of these that didn't get used on the EV1 program. You know, oil filters you need 4 times a year. That was probably the most prominent thing, along with the several quarts of oil every time.
I didn't enjoy working on internal combustion engines just due to the fact you got so dirty. And working on the EV1, I'd basically go home looking like this. Servicing the EV1 was pretty simple. It came in about every 5,000 miles. We'd put it in the air. We'd rotate the tires, add washer fluid to it, and send it back out on the street. It's amazing. Look how dirty I've gotten just in handling this stuff. It's kind of sad.
In order to sincerely market a clean car, you have to suggest that your core product is dirty, and that it uses oil, and that it uses gas, and that it increases our dependence on foreign oil. And here's this product that doesn't.
It looks very schizophrenic, but I think when it started, we could show the people in California we can meet the zero emission requirements. And later on, so do we want to show them that we can meet it. That means all of our other cars.
But the more it caught on, the more that there was this dichotomy between clean and efficient and non-polluting versus a suburban.
Car companies had convinced themselves that they could not make money in the short term with the electric car. In order to do that, they would need an entirely different vehicle.
General Motors made a commitment to the Hummer because they could see the Hummer would make them money.
When the SUVs first came out, people were like, I can't drive that.
That big old
Special
thing?
ladies, that's a tank.
I can't see out of that.
I'm going to murder somebody in that. That's too big.
That's too big for me.
But they convinced people, this is
You
safer.
need this car.
You need
This
a
is
big
safer
car.
You need this
bigger,
for your family.
safer.
The idea of a penny-pinching EV1 that was super green, that didn't get a lot of traction, whereas the idea of a gigantic SUV that would, crush your neighbor, that did get a lot of traction. Basically, that tells us what the 90s was about.
What began as a $25,000 tax break grew to $100,000 when Congress passed the president's economic stimulus package last spring.
We think small businesses need to have support at this time to keep them afloat, to keep the economy moving ahead.
But there's an encouragement for the small business person, not just to stay afloat, but to go buy the biggest gas guzzler there is, the 6,000-pound car, the biggest. Does that make sense?
I don't think we can dictate what vehicles people buy. I think the goal here is...
This is encouraging them. I mean, you can almost buy the whole car for the tax break.
Well, I'm not going to concede that would be the way these would be used, or that...
Well, there's some evidence that is how they're being used.
Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I don't want to see Hummers driven off the market by the government. I want to see everything given a level, equal chance. The thing that bothers me is that in fact, it's not a level, equal chance. We're using our military to ensure the flow of oil. We're using tax dollars to support the car companies in different ways, and we're not using our tax money to do the things that we really need to do to prepare for the future.